What is the number one cause of global warming? If you guessed factory farming, you are correct. Factory farming is one of the biggest contributors to our environmental problems. Cows alone are responsible for 55% of greenhouse emissions. This fact will only grow, because as long as the demand for beef and milk goes up, so will the amount of greenhouse gas. Currently in the United States, there are 98.4 million cattle. 9.3 million are dairy cows, while 30.5 million are beef cows.
So what is the problem with the current population of cows and the land that they occupy?
Chickens, turkeys, pigs, and cows on factory farms generate billions of pounds of drug-laced feces every year. This waste frequently spills over into nearby waterways, killing millions of fish and causing dangerous effects.
As shown in the diagram, cows produce methane, and methane makes up 10% of all greenhouse emissions.
Methane absorbs the sun's heat, which warms the atmosphere.
So, although the overall percentage of methane contribution to greenhouse gas is less than carbon dioxide, its effects are worse. This is because methane effectively absorbs heat, and in 2 decades after its release, methane is 85 times more potent than carbon dioxide.
So why should we care so much about the emissions and waste that come from cows? One of the biggest impacts in terms of waste that these dairy farms can have is that the water sources that are shared by communities can become contaminated with runoff from the dairies. The water can be used as drinking water in homes or as water used in the irrigation of plants and crops. If the water is contaminated by the bacteria from the feces, it can cause a disease outbreak in a community. This is an event that the government, public, and farmers want to avoid, since it can end up costing thousands of dollars to fix. Another impact that dairies have on their community is the gas emission that comes from them. Not only is methane being produced in large quantities, but nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, ammonium, and sulfur are also being produced. These gases are produced naturally by the cows through their normal digestive function. Some of these gases are trapped in the feces but released when they are put into lagoons that are used to contain the large amount of waste that is being produced by the cows. These lagoons are open to the elements, especially the heat, which releases the gas into the air. As the levels of the gases increases, the health risk for the people living in the surrounding communities increases as well. The gases, especially ammonium and sulfur, are highly irritating to the body, especially the respiratory system. Exposure to high levels can cause severe burning to the nose, throat, eyes, windpipe, and large airways within minutes of exposure. Both of these issues have led to the USDA and EPA implementing regulations on the farms in order to try and decrease its effects. However, these regulations have had a big impact on the dairy farms, since the farms can end up spending more money on trying to decrease their waste and emissions than what they make. This causes many farmers to either move out of their current areas and into areas that are less regulated in order to keep up with demand, or to simply shut down.
California residents in the Central Valley have tremendously felt the effects of cow waste pollution, where approximately 20% of the country's milk is produced. Residents of the San Joaquin Valley are not only upset with the bothersome scents, but are also concerned over air and water pollution generated by the cows' waste. The residents' health has even been feeling the effects, causing headaches and migraines. The biggest farming facilities can hold up to thousands of cows at just a single site, in order to keep up with the increasing demand for milk both in the States and overseas. While this is great news for the dairy industries, it continues to bring concerns to local residents. They remain concerned over the ignorance of excess liquid cow manure that is spilled and emits methane gas into the environment in large quantities. However, California isn't the only state that's been confronted with this issue. In fact, farmers throughout the entire nation have been struggling with the ways to properly and efficiently dispose excess manure and have begun receiving penalties if mishandled. Concerns over the mishandling of cow manure has frightened communities across the country. One environmental group based out of Lafayette, New York, reported that a dairy farm with 200 cows produces as much manure as the city of Albany and its 98,000 residents produces sewage. This has caused residents to speak up to city officials to address potential health concerns. The biggest environmental concern is over excess cow manure contaminating waterways. Residents have shared their frustrations because they fear that if the byproducts of improper waste handling makes its way into our waterways, it will cause harm to the health of communities and wildlife. Some farmers have already been taken to court for the mishandling of manure, where in one instance, a Lafayette farmer spilled thousands of gallons of liquid manure. Eventually, this made its way into our waterways. Some of the city's residents started petitions against the dumping of manure in a pit located at the top of a nearby hill because there were reports that it was leaking down. According to the USDA, more than half of the U.S. milk is now produced by just 3% of the country's dairies, and those are from farms with more than 1,000 cows. The waste from these activities is now making its way into aquifers and disposing nitrogen in harmful quantities. For this reason, Wisconsin farmers have already started seeing fines for not disposing their livestock's waste in a safe manner. In the small town of Lincoln, Wisconsin, about half of the town's private wells have water that exceeds bacteria or nitrate standards. There is trouble managing where and how millions of gallons of liquid manure can be disposed, especially since today's dairy farms are highly concentrated in cows in a single area. The largest dairies now accommodate about 15,000 cows or more. According to the USDA, dairy cows are the animals that produce the greatest total manure, far above the amount produced by beef cows, hogs, and pigs. However, the problem is that this waste is coming from a relatively smaller amount of dairy cows versus a larger amount of beef cows. According to 2014 statistics by the USDA, there were about 13.7 million dairy cows in the U.S.
There are some solutions that, when implemented, can reduce the effects of dairy cow waste on ecosystems. 3 solutions include, but are not limited to, changing the content of animal feed, converting to pasture feed methods, and using the cattle waste to create fertilizers and energy. Changing the content of animal feed is a basic yet significant solution that both large and small farms can utilize.
Pasture feeding is a feasible solution that small-scale farms can use in order to reduce their methane and carbon dioxide emission. This practice requires farmers to graze their animals to gain nutrients from the pastures and store dried forages rather than off processed animal feeds. Pasture feed has proven to have some benefits on methane reduction from dairy cows. When they are on pasture, the cows cut the blades, which creates new growth, and their trampling helps to work the manure that they produce and other decaying organic matter into the soil, turning it rich in nutrients. The plant's roots also help maintain soil healthy by retaining water and microbes. This helps keep carbon dioxide and other gases from escaping out into the atmosphere and keeps them in the soil. This practice also eliminates the need to grow crops specifically for animal consumption. Dairy farmers would have to rely on extensive care of pasture as well as maintain a small population of cows in order to have enough usable pasture for the pasture-based diet.
A solution that can be applied to large-scale farms is the biogas recovery system. In 1990, a solution for food waste was created that provided energy. The solution was the anaerobic digester, which is a machine that takes food waste and converts it into compost and energy. A similar machine was created for cow feces, known as the biogas recovery system. Similar to the anaerobic digester, the biogas recovery system collects manure and converts the methane into electricity.
But for Gallo and a handful of other big dairy farms in California, the trapped methane biogas powers the farm's generators. Gallo creates enough of its own electricity and steam to save the farm $3,000 to $4,000 a day.
It is no doubt that there is a current environmental crisis. Global warming is a large-scale catastrophe, and without lower emissions of greenhouse gases and fossil fuels, including those that come from cows, we will see a higher amount of the Earth's protective atmosphere decrease. The Earth needs more solutions to stop global warming. Responsible cow production practices and the reduction of cow manure is extremely needed. Impacts involving cows are deforestation, effects on biodiversity of grasslands after the removal of livestock, imbalances in our ecosystem, and water contamination. Forests are often cut down and then inhabited by farmers in the dairy or beef industry. High concentrations of cows and manure have often led once green grassy fields as toxic waste locations after cows have been removed. According to a Stanford University report, without a change in current practices, the intensive increase in projected livestock production systems will double the current environmental burden and will contribute to large-scale ecosystem degradation unless appropriate measures are taken. The high consumption of dairy and beef cattle leads to the mass production of environments filled with these animals that naturally release gases. One of the most effective solutions to eliminate high amounts of cow methane emissions would be to reduce the amount of cow production and breeding. But due to society's demand for beef and other cow products, it seems like an almost impossible solution to propose. Although cow populations in dairy and beef farms would stay the same, the practices used to effectively eliminate or convert cow feces into usable energy helps in decreasing greenhouse gases and methane emissions. Environmentally, the reduction of greenhouse gases is ideal to preserve the Earth and lead it away from global warming. In a world that is shared by many and who are all equally responsible for the pollution of the world, it is important to make subtle changes in the cow industry to preserve the Earth and to eliminate all factors that can harm humans health-wise and environmentally.